Good people, did you know that there are folks who don't apply for jobs? Don't even look for business opportunities. Opportunities just come to them. They are on the headhunters list. How do you get yourself on the headhunters list? Well, we'll be telling you that and a lot more only on the Headhunter Show.
Hi, my name is Emily Kamunde. I'm the founder of Rise and Learn Global. I'm also a HR leader and a professional coach. The three things that I've learned in the course of running a business, in the course of my own profession, is that number one, integrity is key. The longest route is a shortcut. Number two, you have got to work it. Nothing comes easy. Number three, respect. Respect for your teams, respect for your leaders.
Greetings and welcome to another exciting episode of The Headhunter, only on KTN Home. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. Well, we continue with great conversations about the people who always look out for great talent and top talent for that matter. And just to encourage you, well, did you know that people who do not apply for jobs, they're hunted? How do you get yourself on that hunted list? Well, today we have an exciting guest, and she's none other than Emily Kamunde. She's the managing director, founder of Rise and Learn. She's also a coach as well, has done a lot of work with the International Coaching Federation and also Ericsson Coaching. I mean, a lot more on that on her profile on your screens right now. Great, and also coming to you from Kofisi Africa, a great partner, of course, in the Headhunter, an exciting space you want to look out, especially when you want to get the work done. Emily, welcome to Kofisi and, of course, the Headhunter.
Thank you, Lavan. Thanks for having me.
Great, and it's good to have you on our first season as we continue conversations with you leaders, especially coming in from a bit of a very slow, 2-year, of course, caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. What did you learn?
I think learning to unlearn, I thought I knew, how to plan. You thought you have everything fixed for the business, but then you realize that you really have to pivot and keep shifting plans as you go along. I think the one other thing I learned is to just lower ambitions.
Were you too ambitious?
Yeah, to be a bit more pragmatic, as just to align to the current business environment, and really just survive. Because I think the last 2 years have been really about surviving, at least keeping the business afloat, putting food on the table, and just making sure that you're not letting anyone go. I think that was the most critical, really, and to hold on to the businesses that we had, trying not to lose any of that.
Why it's exciting to speak to you is that you play in that sort of SME space, which is a very critical element, especially in Kenya today, looking at the vibrancy around SMEs. If you speak on, say, on behalf of the other SMEs in the country, we saw some shutting down, we saw some job losses out there as well. What do you see as some of the factors that SMEs also learned as a fraternity as a whole?
The pandemic affected both sides, really, whether it's large corporates, whether it's the SMEs, but I do think that the small businesses suffered the most because the challenges have always been around, the financial muscle, it's always been around the capacity and really staying power because of the different dynamics and that support the economy, so to speak, for them to be able to thrive. I think that one of the biggest ones was just being able to retain their talent, affording them, just being able to pay them and keep them during that particular time. That was the biggest. And I think the other one was sustaining the business. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not all doom and gloom. Well, it's a new year, so I can't say COVID is behind us, but we are learning, of course, getting ourselves vaccinated, getting the booster shot. So there's a bit of excitement. So in the new year, as Rise and Learn, as a coach, what are you looking at and what are you focusing on?
I mean, I think for me, I'm looking at growth because the fact that we survived the last 2 years and we actually did well. Interestingly, 2020, was one of the years that, we kind of saw profitability and things like that. So it tells you that if we could survive in a difficult year, then with 2022 now, we are really looking at, thriving.
Focusing on the stuff that matter and part of that, we're seeing businesses outsource. You playing in the HR space, how is that coming along?
Well, for us, we've been in this space for the last 5 years now, and one of the things we realize is that business owners, as entrepreneurs, you set up your business, the first thing you want to think about is not HR or hiring a HR manager to run your people, but it's really around having the processes in place. You want to be able to sell your product or your service, right, and just meet the bare minimum. So you want business owners to focus on what they do best, and that's running the business. Yeah, so the HR outsourcing space is huge. One, from a point of, we don't want to manage our labor, we want to leave it to the experts so that we focus on the core business. But then again, it comes in terms of big changes within the organizations. You're restructuring, right? It's huge. Communication, the change management element. So that I've seen it outsourced to HR firms in the recent past, because a lot of that has been going on. And I think businesses are also recognizing that they need to do things right. People need to be treated with dignity. And at the same time, they're having to deal with a lot of pressure of keeping business afloat. At the same time, who takes care of this other side of people? So it's important to have them do it right. And so we've seen them, getting, support of consultants in this particular space, which I think is also the right thing to do, because as a country, the HR professional is now regulated by an act of parliament, which is great, which means that, you have professionals who are running the HR space and not just anybody else. That means that the employees' rights will be taken care of, at the same time looking at that the employer, just is within the right course from an expense point of view.
Emily, that's quite critical here. And why I'm saying that is, I'm sitting in as a, CFO, for instance, chief HR, or CEO for that matter, and you're telling me to outsource one of the critical assets in my organization, which is a human capital. Isn't there a risk into that, in the sense of that I will not be able to have a clear line of sight into really how my people are managed, for instance?
No, I think you look at it as two aspects. There's a strategic piece and there's the operational piece, right?
Yeah.
The strategy in terms of what do I envision for this business, where do I envision for my people, because at the end of the day, it's not just people working for you and going home, but it's also about what value are you adding to your people, and what impact are they creating within the organization. So pieces around how you manage your talent, pieces around as your business expands, who is going to be taking care of that business. So being able to identify that talent and being able to manage how you reward and compensate them, into the future. Yeah. Those are more strategic kind of conversations, right? Yeah. Now that piece can never really be outsourced, because it needs to sit actually within the executive. The CEO of the business needs to really run with that and needs to support the HR business partner in that perspective. But then you've got the operations side of HR, shared services, things around payroll, things around time and attendance, and especially when you look at the factory setup, manufacturing, for example, the kind of work job holders in that space is very different from this other side. So there are different skill sets. There's a professional, then there's a skilled workers. So you've got to manage all of this differently. Depending on your industry, depending on the kind of job that actually, each of them is doing. So again, it just depends from organization to organization, but largely speaking, the operation side of HR is easily outsourced. That speaks to the payroll, the systems, anything related to, ins and outs of the HR business.
Okay. Yeah. I want to change and shift gears a bit, Emily, and just really pick your brain on something that's also quite critical, especially as we talk towards what business organizations are learning after the pandemic. We've spoken about job losses, profit losses, and SMEs really struggling and taking a huge beating, especially after the pandemic. And then comes the need of, coaching, mentoring, holding the hands of sort of such talent, for instance, that organizations have lost. And then bring in a critical aspect onto why organizations should invest in coaching.
I think when you talk about coaching, it's really the overarching piece is around leadership development. So any organization should be investing in their people from a leadership angle, right from the time they get into the organization going into the future. And coaching just being one of the facets within the leadership development is really playing a big role, especially now. I think more so in Kenya, it's also started really to gain traction, and leaders who've participated in those kind of programs are seeing the value. How so? In the sense that coaching in itself is a transformative profession. Yeah. As a program within the organization, it supports leaders to be more solution focused. They're also creating a culture where employees are actually looking at how do we solve the problems that we are facing today as an organization. Instead of me having to go to the CEO for my answers, I'm also looking at how can we create that within our own function, our own departments. So kind of creating independence kind of thinking, shifting mindsets to looking at what could the future look like, right? Visioning. It's also really about self-awareness. Individuals being able to be more aware of what are their strengths, what are they most good at, where should they be focusing their strengths, right? Yeah. And so really that's where the coaching is playing a big space, more from the personal growth perspective, but also on the leadership development side of things. Yeah. It's becoming quite critical. And again, leaders and businesses that have invested in coaching are seeing the benefits from a point of productivity, growth, from a point of improved communication within the organization, because it teaches you how to give and receive feedback, how to do simple things like just listening and really having those candid conversations that you can understand where the other person is coming from. And if you can take those skills to the boardrooms, if you can take those skills to your departments, to your usual conversations with your employees, I think it just makes the workplace a better place to be, because it just makes us more human and in fact, the other conversation is having is that even with the coaching, it kind of creates a ripple effect to other, say for instance, your coachees, your mentees, for instance, and the coachees also will get coached somebody else, and that it kind of creates that opportunity for growth. I'd like to look at even now the international space, because you also sat on the board of the International Coaches Federation. How is that playing out? And of course, relating also with the Ericsson coaching, we're seeing that there is a great concern around coaching worldwide. So I don't know how you see the trends worldwide compared to Africa. So if you'd put an opportunity, if you'd prioritize, for instance, and where would coaching play, for instance, in an executive management team? If they are now doing their strategies for the year, where would you want to place it? I think it plays in the bigger game of learning and development within the leadership and development space for their people. And it shouldn't be for just the elite, the executive. It actually should be for all employees. So I see that conversation happening and saying, can we invest? Can we put some investment, not just for coaching in itself, but just coaching being part of the bigger leadership development program for their teams? And I do think that the beginning point actually should be with the executive themselves. Because if leaders can appreciate the value and benefits that coaching brings, I think they would have even more valuable conversations in those boardrooms. They would be looking at performance differently. They're not just looking at growth goals from business side, but they're looking at individual performance and how they support people and how they themselves actually should be contributors to to the growth of performance for the different people in the organization.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's speak about now the opportunities as well. I think maybe just lastly, you can talk about training. I think training and development touches a bit on coaching, but maybe something that Rise and Learn is doing as well. You can just touch on that as you get the tail end.
So Rise and Learn has been in the space of training. Actually, that's where we began before we got into the HR outsourcing and the coaching, because largely every organization needs that. But for us specifically, we target the HR professionals in the country, being able to provide them with skills that they need to deliver and to be even more competent, HR leaders as they grow into the profession, right from entry level to senior level, supporting them get their continuous professional development as a requirement in this country. So we are accredited by the Institute of Human Resource Management, and we work very closely with them as well, just to understand what their expectations are and how can we serve the HR professionals in the country. So that's one side of our business that I've seen really continue to add value, and there is a big need for it as well, because the HRs every year they are also looking to how do we advance ourselves. So we are constantly also just shifting how we run our programs, developing new curriculums that will be able to serve them. And at the same time, also going into the corporates as well, whether it's soft skills development for your team in customer service, whether front facing or back office. So each of these have got to have different needs. So organizations normally would look for training programs depending on what their specific needs are, and we come to serve in that particular space. Yeah.
So it's another critical point, and it's a thing we were discussing, and a thing we loosely here, of course, as the headhunter, we deliberate and have great conversations with business leaders such as yourselves. And I don't know, for you as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, if you understand this whole bit about managing the Gen X's, the Gen Z's, the Gen Y's, and all that, which is all to do with talent. And I want to really pose it now to Emily, and of course, just as a headhunter tidbit, for you to just explain it, because as the year progresses, we see a great disconnect, or some bit of a disconnect between, top leaders or top managers who've been there or been in the game for long, not really understanding how to manage these youngsters who have great fire in the belly. So help us differentiate all that.
To be honest, I think sometimes that kind of thinking is a bit overrated, because by now I do think that businesses and those in the corporate space are very much aware that the needs of these young people are very different from the older generation. I don't think I can generalize and say they're not getting it yet. I do think those companies that have been alert and have had their ears to what do these young generation, what would make them more effective, what would make them more excited to come to work. So they have developed strategies that actually speak to the young generation. And you realize people are more creative. People actually are giving more. I don't know if you've noticed that, but people are working more with this whole arrangement.
Yes.
Because when you allow people to just, work within their limits, of course with some level of discipline, organizations also have had to come up with ways of how do we manage productivity then when people are working from home.
You have all these three facets you're handling. You have coaching, you have outsourcing, you have training, something you're really keen on. Not too young in the field, not revealing your age anyway, but of course worked for top companies in the country. Now you're running your own business. So what are you seeing as the future of HR looking post the pandemic?
I see opportunities, and taking myself as an example, I mean, coming from the HR field and now an entrepreneur, I actually never imagined that I would be running a business within the HR space, but the opportunities are huge. For me, what really drives me is that need for job creation, so creating opportunities for as many people. So that's a problem actually I'm trying to solve as an entrepreneur. And going into the future, we are looking into creating opportunities for people outside of the country, exporting labor, because we have over demand. The demand we can't even meet. The people are really looking for jobs in this country, and it's a shame. A lot of them were lost during the pandemic. Already it was a problem, so the pandemic made it worse. Yet on the positive end is that we have a young population, average of 19 years, and within the workspaces you have less than 30, year olds in the workspaces. And so the other parts of the world are needing our kind of skills. So we are looking to see how can we shift, how can we start exporting labor into countries that are actually needing the professional skilled workers. That's a space that I'll be playing in the near future. Very excited about that.
Any markets you're looking at, critical markets?
Yeah, probably the UK and Canada would be the first ones we want to start with.
Yeah. So talent from Kenya looking towards traveling.
Yeah. I think we've now become a global community, and it is even possible to actually have this done, opportunities both virtual and in the physical space. So so that's what I see as the future.
That's great, and wish you all the best in that. Emily, just before we let you go, you can look at the camera in front of you, and as the headhunter, of course, we would like to converse and speak to the entrepreneur, the business leader, who's always, deep in that boardroom and would like to be quite adept with the skill set that they have, and also help them in decision making. So here goes Emily Kamunde giving her closing remarks and maybe tidbits, her management tidbits.
I think for me, the one thing is always think about what problem you're trying to solve. So when you think about the problem, then it becomes easier to kind of tweak and develop your products and services to meet the needs of the market. And I always say that people come first. People come first. Very, very important. Because people will drive your business. People will grow your business. All that people need is a compelling vision. So if you have a compelling vision, people will come to you because of that vision. They will follow you, and they will actually work for you, and they will actually just contribute, in ways that you never imagined, as long as also they can see what's in it for them. So as you grow your business, grow your people. Very important. They must go hand in hand. For me, I think that would define what success would look like for business owners, for entrepreneurs, if you can balance the people and the business needs.
As you grow your business, grow your people.
Absolutely.
It's a nice way to end it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emily Kamunde Osoro has been our guest today. CEO, co-founder of Ryzen Land, and also an executive coach, has been your guest today. Thank you for being with us on The Headhunter, coming to you on KTN Home. It's been a pleasure. My name is Laban Cliff. Be sure to catch this episode and a lot more on KTN Home's social media pages, and of course, the largest Standard Group digital sites. Thank you, and see you again next time. Goodbye.